There comes a moment in every person's life when strength seems to disappear. A moment when you feel tired in your body, weary in your mind, and discouraged in your spirit. You may have tried everything you know to do. You prayed, you worked, you pushed forward, and yet the situation did not change. Instead, it became heavier. Instead, it became harder. And in that moment, you begin to wonder if your weakness means defeat. But I want you to understand something very clearly. Weakness is not the end of your story. In fact, weakness is often the very place where God's power begins to show itself in the most remarkable way. You see, most of us grow up believing that strength is what earns success. We think that if we are strong enough, smart enough, disciplined enough, then we can handle anything life throws at us. We learn to rely on our own abilities, our own plans, and our own resources. And for a while, that may work, but eventually, life will bring you to a place where your strength is no longer enough, a place where your experience cannot fix the problem, a place where your energy cannot carry the burden, a place where your confidence begins to shake. And that is not an accident. That is not a mistake. That is often the very moment God has been waiting for. Because as long as you believe you can handle everything on your own, you will depend on yourself. But when your strength runs out, when your plans fall apart, when your heart feels overwhelmed, you begin to look beyond yourself. You begin to reach upward instead of inward. You begin to depend on God in a way you never have before. Think about the times in your life when you felt the most desperate, the most uncertain, the most afraid. Those were not wasted moments. Those were sacred moments. Those were the moments when God was quietly working behind the scenes, strengthening you in ways you could not see, preparing you for a future you could not yet imagine. God is not intimidated by your weakness. He is not discouraged by your tears. He is not disappointed when you feel exhausted. In fact, He is drawn to those moments. He moves toward the brokenhearted. He steps into the situations that seem impossible. He provides strength where there is none. Sometimes God will allow you to reach the end of yourself so that you can discover the beginning of His power. He will allow the pressure to build the challenge to remain and the struggle to continue, not to harm you, but to reveal to you that His strength is greater than your weakness. And once you learn that lesson, once you experience His strength carrying you through what you thought you could not survive, your faith will never be the same again. So if you find yourself in a season where you feel weak, overwhelmed, or uncertain, do not lose heart. Do not assume that your weakness means failure. Do not believe that your struggle means God has abandoned you. Your weakness may be the very doorway through which God's power is about to enter your life. Because when your strength ends, God's strength begins. There are seasons in life when everything seems to slow down, when doors close unexpectedly, when prayers appear to go unanswered, and when the path ahead feels uncertain. In those moments, it is very easy to feel alone. It is easy to assume that God has stepped back, that He is distant, or that He is silent. But the truth is, your lowest moments are often the very moments when God is drawing you closer to Himself in the most personal and powerful way. You see, when life is comfortable and everything is going well, most people do not feel a strong need to depend on God. Success can make us confident in ourselves. Stability can make us comfortable in our routines. We begin to rely on our own abilities, our own plans, and our own understanding. And without even realizing it, our relationship with God can become casual, distant, or secondary, not because we do not believe in Him, but because we do not feel desperate for Him. But hardship has a way of changing that. Pain has a way of getting our attention. Struggle has a way of turning our hearts back toward God. When the situation becomes too heavy to carry, when the answers are no longer clear, when the future feels uncertain, we begin to seek Him more sincerely. We pray more earnestly. We listen more carefully. We depend more completely. And that is often exactly what God desires. Not your perfection, not your performance, but your closeness. Sometimes God allows difficulty to enter your life, not to push you away, but to pull you nearer. He uses the very pressure you wish would disappear to create a deeper connection between you and Him. He uses the uncertainty to teach you trust. He uses the waiting to build patience. He uses the struggle to shape your character and strengthen your faith. Think about it this way: relationships grow strongest during challenging times. When you walk through hardship with someone, when you depend on them, there will be moments in your life when what you are facing simply does not make sense. You will do the right thing and still encounter trouble. You will pray faithfully and still experience delay. You will trust sincerely and still feel uncertainty pressing against your heart. And in those moments, the greatest struggle is not always the problem itself. The greatest struggle is trying to understand why it is happening. We are naturally wired to want explanations. We want to know the reason behind the pain, the purpose behind the delay, the answer to the question, why me? We want clarity before we feel peace. We want understanding before we feel confident. But God does not always operate according to our desire for immediate answers. Sometimes He asks us to trust Him even when the situation remains unclear. You see, trust is not built when everything makes sense. Trust is built when you choose to believe even when you cannot see the full picture. It is easy to have faith when the path is straight and the outcome is predictable. But real faith begins when the road becomes uncertain and the future feels hidden. Think about how a child trusts a loving parent. That child does not understand every decision the parent makes. There are times when the parent says no, times when the parent asks the child to wait, times when the parent leads the child in a direction the child does not fully understand. Yet the child continues to follow because the child trusts the parent's heart. The child believes that even without understanding, the parent is acting out of love and wisdom. In the same way, God invites you to trust His heart when you cannot trace His hand. He invites you to believe that He sees what you cannot see, that He knows what you do not know, and that He is working in ways that are beyond your understanding. What looks like delay to you may actually be protection. What feels like silence may actually be preparation. What seems like a closed door may be God redirecting you towards something better. There are seasons when God withholds the full explanation because He is developing your faith. If He explained everything in advance, well, it would rely on knowledge instead of trust. But when you walk forward without all the answers, your faith grows stronger. Your dependence deepens. Your confidence in Him becomes steadier and more mature. You may be in a situation right now where nothing makes sense. You may be asking questions that seem to have no answers. You may be waiting longer than you expected, struggling harder than you planned, or carrying a burden you never imagined. And the temptation is to doubt, to worry, or to assume that something has gone wrong. But I want you to remember this: God is never confused about your situation. He is never late. He is never uncertain. Even when you cannot see the path, He is guiding your steps. Even when you cannot understand the reason, He is working behind the scenes. He is working behind the scenes. Even when the outcome feels unclear, His purpose remains secure. So do not let confusion shake your faith. Do not allow uncertainty to steal your peace. You do not have to understand everything to trust God completely. Trust Him anyway. One of the greatest struggles we face in difficult seasons is the desire to stay in control. When life becomes uncertain, when problems begin to pile up, our natural reaction is to hold on tighter. We try to fix everything ourselves. We think harder, work longer, worry more, and push ourselves beyond our limits because we believe that if we just try a little harder, we can manage the situation. But there comes a point when the burden becomes too heavy, and no matter how strong you are, you simply cannot carry it alone. That is the moment when God invites you to surrender. Now, surrender is often misunderstood. Many people hear that word and immediately think it means giving up. They think it means weakness, defeat, or failure. But in the life of faith, surrender is not giving up, it is handing over. It is the wise and courageous decision, patient into hands that are stronger than yours. It is acknowledging that while you have done your best, there are things only God can do. You see, as long as you insist on controlling everything, you limit what God can accomplish in your life. When your hands are tightly clenched around your plans, your expectations, and your fears, there is no room to receive His strength. But when you open your hands, when you release the pressure, the anxiety, and the need to manage every outcome, you create space for God to work in ways you never imagined. There are people listening right now who are exhausted, not because the problem is too big, but because they have been trying to carry it alone for too long. You've been worrying about your future, your finances, your family, your health, or your responsibilities. You lie awake at night replaying scenarios in your mind, searching for solutions, trying to predict outcomes. And the more you think, the heavier the burden feels. God never intended for you to live that way. He did not design you to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. He did not expect you to have all the answers or control every detail of your life. What He desires is your trust. He desires your willingness to release what you cannot control and depend on Him for the strength you need. Surrender often begins with a simple but powerful decision. It is the moment you say, "Lord, I have done all I can do. I place this situation in your hands. I trust you with the outcome." That decision does not instantly remove the challenge, but it changes your posture. Instead of striving, you begin resting. Instead of worrying, you begin trusting. Instead of carrying the burden alone, you allow God to carry it with you. And something remarkable happens when you surrender. Peace begins to settle into your heart. Clarity begins to replace confusion. Strength begins to rise where exhaustion once lived. Not because the situation has changed immediately, but because you are no longer relying solely on your own strength. God's strength flows most freely into the life that is fully surrendered to Him. So if you are feeling overwhelmed, if you are tired of fighting battles you cannot win on your own, if you are carrying burdens that feel too heavy, perhaps the answer is not to try harder, but to surrender deeper. Because the moment you release control into God's hands is the moment His strength takes hold of your life. There is something very difficult about going through a struggle when you cannot immediately see the benefit of it. When you are in the middle of hardship, it feels uncomfortable, unfair, and sometimes even pointless. You may look at your situation and wonder, what good could possibly come from this? You may feel like the pressure is too intense, the waiting is too long, and the burden is too heavy, but what you cannot see in the moment is that your struggle is not wasted. It is working on you, shaping you, strengthening you, and preparing you for what lies ahead. God never wastes pain. Not a single tear you shed, not a single sleepless night you endure, not a single moment of disappointment you experience is meaningless in His plan. Even when life feels chaotic and uncertain, He is quietly building something inside you that will become valuable in the future. He is developing qualities in your character that comfort and ease could never produce. Think about how strength is developed in the physical world. Muscles do not grow during comfort. They grow during resistance. When pressure is applied, when effort is required, when the body is pushed beyond its comfort zone, strength begins to form. The same principle applies to your spiritual life. Without challenge, there is no endurance. Without difficulty, there is no resilience. Without struggle, there is no growth. Many people pray for strength, but they do not realize that strength is often delivered through struggle. They pray for patience, but patience is developed through waiting. They pray for courage, but courage is formed in the presence of fear. In other words, the very situation you wish would disappear may be the very situation God is using to answer your prayer. You may be facing a season right now that feels uncomfortable and uncertain. Perhaps you are dealing with disappointment, delay, loss, or pressure. You may feel like you are being stretched beyond your limits. But stretching is not breaking. Pressure is not punishment. These experiences are often preparation. God sees the future you cannot yet see. He knows the responsibilities you will carry, the opportunities you will face, and the challenge is you will overcome. And because He loves you, He prepares you in advance. He strengthens your faith before the next battle arrives. He builds your endurance before the next responsibility appears. He shapes your character before the next door opens. One day, you will look back on this season and realize that it was not a detour, it was training. It was the time when your faith became stronger, your patience became deeper, and your confidence in God became more secure. The struggle that once felt overwhelming will become the testimony that encourages someone else. The pain that once made you question will become the strength that helps you stand firm. So do not despise the season you are in. Do not rush through the process or assume that nothing good is happening. Even now, God is working behind the scenes, building strength within you that will carry you into the future He has prepared. Because the struggle you are facing today is preparing you for the strength you will need tomorrow. There is one truth you must settle in your heart if you are going to walk through difficult seasons with confidence. And it is this: victory does not belong to the strongest, the smartest, or the most talented. Victory belongs to those who refuse to give up. It belongs to those who keep trusting God when the storm refuses to pass, when the answers do not come quickly, and when the path ahead still looks uncertain. Every person will face storms in life. There will be moments of disappointment, seasons of struggle, and times when you feel weak and overwhelmed. That is not a sign of failure. It is a part of the human journey. But what determines your outcome is not the presence of the storm. It is your response to it. Some people allow hardship to break their spirit. Others allow hardship to strengthen their faith. You see, faith is not proven when everything is going well. Faith is proven when everything is going wrong and you still choose to trust God. It is easy to praise when the doors are opening, when the finances are stable, when the family is healthy, and when the future looks bright. But real faith shows itself when the doors close, when the pressure increases, when the answers delay, and when the future feels uncertain. There will be days when you feel like quitting, days when you feel tired of praying, tired of waiting, tired of believing. You may look at your situation and think, nothing is changing, nothing is improving, nothing is working. And in those moments, the enemy will whisper discouragement into your mind. He will try to convince you that your efforts are useless, that your prayers are unheard, and that your hope is misplaced. But that is the very moment you must stand firm, because God is often doing His greatest work when you see the least evidence. He is moving behind the scenes, arranging circumstances, opening doors you cannot yet see, and preparing breakthroughs you cannot yet imagine. Just because you do not see immediate results does not mean God is inactive. Just because the storm continues does not mean the victory is canceled. Think about a storm at sea. The waves may be high, the wind may be strong, and the sky may be dark, but storms do not last forever. Eventually, the wind settles. Eventually, the clouds break. Eventually, the sun appears again. In the same way, the storm in your life has an expiration date. It may last longer than you expected, but it will not last forever. Your responsibility is not to control the storm. Your responsibility is to remain faithful in the middle of it. Keep praying even when you feel tired. Keep believing even when you feel discouraged. Keep moving forward even when progress seems slow. Every step of faith you take, no matter how small, strengthens your spirit and draws you closer to the victory God has prepared for you. One day you will look back and realize that the moment you felt like quitting was the moment your breakthrough was closest. The night felt darkest just before the dawn arrived. The pressure felt heaviest just before the burden lifted, and the storm felt strongest just before the calm returned. So hold on to your faith. Stand firm in your trust. Refuse to give up no matter how difficult the journey becomes, because victory comes to those who keep trusting God in the storm.